In the headlines, government and private sector officials sensitize on the Food Safety Modernization Act, produce safety rules. The launching of this year's Carnival Queen contestants wraps up this weekend with the launching of Shannon Saint-Hilaire in Soufriere. And the World Health Organization declares the coronavirus a global emergency. I'm Andrea Louis with the Channel 5 News. Back with the details after this.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 7 days of unlimited social messaging, 3 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, 700 local anywhere calls and texts with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $29. Keep your number when you switch to Dominica's most reliable LTE network. Buy wherever you top up. Switch to Flow. It only gets better. A new in-home experience is here. All your services bundled into one simple plan. Faster, more reliable Wi-Fi so that you can binge, play, and stream uninterrupted. Unlimited Flow local landline minutes mean you can talk and talk and talk. Plus the best in TV entertainment with over 120 channels and 29 in HD. All for $160 a month with the new all-in bundle. With Flow, it only gets better.
Thank you for staying with us. First up, government and private sector officials now better informed on the Food Safety Modernization Act, produce safety rules. The Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, IICA, in collaboration with the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, earlier this week hosted the first for the year in a series of webinars on the Food Safety Modernization Act, produce safety rules. This is the first webinar for the year 2020, but fourth in a series which started in 2019. The objective of these webinars is to sensitize government and private sector officials in the Americas about the FSMA. IICA's technical specialist in Dominica, Kent Copel, says these webinars are extremely useful to governments across the region.
This webinar is specific to deal with the standards for growing, harvesting, packaging and holding of produce for human consumption, and we're looking at subpart F, biological soil amendments of animal origin and human waste, subpart I, domesticated and wild animals, and subpart K, growing, harvesting, packaging and holding activities. The webinar is facilitated by officials, experts from the FDA.
In more top stories, a challenge to the authorities to put mechanisms in place to ensure the youth are trained in the manufacturing sector to help the industry thrive. Julian Morris tells us more.
President of the Dominican Manufacturers Association, Severin McKenzie, was addressing a national consultation this week to chart the way forward for the manufacturing sector. He says youth involvement is key to creating a sustainable manufacturing sector from which the country can see a noticeable economic impact.
If the education policymakers recognize the need for training of young people in the numerous career paths associated with manufacturing, such as mechanical engineers, food technologists, nutritionists, technicians, graphic designers, marketing specialists, agronomists, and the list goes on, the manufacturing sector will thrive.
In order to see further growth of the industry, McKenzie contends there must be upward mobility and cottage industries must be given the environment to flourish.
The DMA considers the cottage industries as a critical component to the manufacturing sector and encourages them to be part of the association. Our aim is to see cottage industries graduate to be larger entities. We cannot be cottage industries forever, and upward mobility must be part of our ambition. If the agriculture sector supplies sufficient raw materials for processing of coconut products, passion fruit, herbs and spices, cocoa, coffee, citrus, bananas, plantains, hot peppers, just to mention a few, then we believe that the manufacturing sector will thrive.
The DMA president is adamant that the consultation was not just another talk shop, but rather an action plan for the manufacturing sector.
Today's session is the beginning of a process which we considered to be a bottom-up approach towards action, an action plan for the manufacturing sector. We are deliberate in not considering it a policy, since this we consider to be the responsibility of policymakers. The approach is a practical one. We need to get our manufacturing facilities back into production. Those that are operational to increase their input, those that are not operational to get them going again. And those who wish to invest in the manufacturing sector, we want to tell them, don't be afraid. Manufacturing is still one of the pillars with the most promise for the Dominican economy.
A national symposium is scheduled for late February as a follow-up to this stakeholder consultation.
On to health matters. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. The Honorable Irvin McIntyre says government's coronavirus action plan will ensure that Chinese nationals who live and work here do not travel back to China and return, putting the public at risk. At a news conference this week, the health minister reassured the nation that Dominican students studying in China were safe and said staying in China was in their best interest. He also said that government had provided additional financial support for the students. The issue of the potential risk from Chinese nationals traveling to China and returning here formed part of questions on public safety at this week's news conference.
We have dealt with this. We're in constant contact with the embassy officials here. And then, yes, they're going to be staying there. They won't be traveling back to China to have to come back. So that has been dealt with, and we've brought this point across to the embassy, and they're cooperating very well with us on that regard. So they will be here. So that's not an issue of Chinese construction workers or immigrants going home and coming back. So that's not an issue. We've dealt with this at the embassy level already.
In related news, the new coronavirus has been declared a global emergency by the World Health Organization as the disease continues to spread in countries outside of China. The WHO declares a public health emergency of international concern when there is an extraordinary event which is determined to constitute a public health risk to other states through the international spread of disease. The head of the WHO says, open quote, "The main reason for this declaration is not what is happening in China, but what is happening in other countries," close quote. The concern is that it could spread to countries with weaker health systems. The death toll now stands at 170 people in China. The WHO said there had been 98 cases in 18 countries outside of the country, but no deaths. Most cases have emerged in people who have traveled from the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the outbreak began. You are watching the Channel 5 News. Stay tuned for more after the break.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 7 days of unlimited social messaging, 3 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, 700 local anywhere calls and texts, with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $29. Keep your number when you switch to Dominica's most reliable LTE network. Buy wherever you top up. Switch to Flow. It only gets better. A new in-home experience is here. All your services bundled into one simple plan. Faster, more reliable Wi-Fi so that you can binge, play, and stream uninterrupted. Unlimited Flow local landline minutes mean you can talk and talk and talk. Plus the best in TV entertainment with over 120 channels and 29 in HD. All for $160 a month with the new all-in bundle. With Flow, it only gets better.
Welcome back. An appeal to traditional groups to bring back some lost elements of the traditional mass. Julian Morris has that story.
The plea from Chief Cultural Officer Raymond Lawrence ahead of the staging of the Old Mass Festival on Sunday. Mr. Lawrence says over the years, some aspects of traditional masquerading have disappeared, and the Cultural Division is reaching out to the public to bring back these features.
We have been informing the groups and reminding them about some of the old mass in Dominica traditions, which I remember as growing up as a boy, we used to have a group called the Indians that has died out. I haven't seen them for many years, and that tradition is very similar to what they call the masquerades in Montserrat and St. Kitts and Bermuda. very similar. And so that certainly would like to see and encourage, hopefully bring back that kind of masquerade. The red ochre that you mentioned, we see the darkies, but it's the red ochre that we'd probably like to see again.
Another group which is slowly but surely making a comeback is that of the women wearing the country's national wear, namely the jupe and wop-douillet. Incidentally, our wop-douillet and jupe that we see a lot at Independence Time was very much a part of Carnival. Mrs. Corderon, our folk hero, used to organize both wop-douillet and jupe bands, and I think we've kind of lost that a bit now. We kind of feel wop-douillet and jupe is for independence, which is also true, but they also formed an important part of Carnival as well. So I think we can also try to bring back that tradition as well. The Carnival Mas festival, which is now in its 22nd year, is seeing a larger number of participating traditional groups this year. It starts off with a parade outside of the public library, DBS radio area, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then the parade will turn left on High Street, Dawasco there on that street, and turn right on Bath Road onto the Newtown Savannah. And when we arrive at the Newtown Savannah, then we will have a showcase of the traditional mass groups, some on stage, some prefer just to showcase on the ground to give them more space. And there are a total of 22 groups this year, which is an increase from last year. The Carnival Mas Festival will be held on Sunday at the Newtown Savannah from 3 in the afternoon.
The final Miss Dominica 2020 contestant to be officially launched in her community on Saturday. 22-year-old Shannon Connor Saint-Hilaire, who is sponsored by Jungle Bay Resort and Spa, is contestant number 7 in the Miss Dominica pageant. Miss Saint-Hilaire is representing the communities of Soufriere and Scottshead while pushing the platform of marine conservation with a concentration on the eradication of single-use plastics. The village launching for Miss Saint-Hilaire will start with a motorcade from the Soufriere Primary School to the Soufriere Bayfront, where the official launching will take place from 3 p.m. And the Minister for the Environment, Honorable Cozier Frederick, called for action this week on initiatives to position Dominica to benefit from a national climate change policy and action plan. Mr. Frederick spoke at a 3-day civil society national stakeholder workshop which wrapped up here this week under the Green Climate Fund Readiness Project. Frederick says over the years, a lot of preparatory work had gone into collaboration with international initiatives with a view to accessing funding to implement climate resilience policies.
And also as a student of history, I have realized that the timeline for all of this development seems to me very interesting. So for instance, we have timelines, dates 1993, 2005, 2016. In 1993, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was signed on the 21st of June. By January 2005, we became a party to the Kyoto Protocol, and in 2016, the Paris Agreement. Spans of 12, 11, so we're looking at 24-year span of doing that kind of work. So we have to be mindful of this. Sometimes we forget the amount of work that has happened in the course of moving initiatives forward.
Frederick says environmental legislation and the Climate Change Trust Fund remain top priorities for government. To end the news, the headlines again. Government and the private sector officials are sensitized on the Food Safety Modernization Act, produce safety rules. The village launchings for this year's Carnival Queen contestants wraps up this weekend with the launching of Shannon Saint-Hilaire in Soufriere. And the World Health Organization, WHO, declares the coronavirus a global emergency. Feel free to access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Andrea Louis, and to all of our viewers around the world, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.